there, people. Welcome to another episode of the Rockshow, episode 59. And who do we have today?
Hey, we're talking about the Troggs, okay? Probably one of the most underrated bands of all time. Proto-punk.
Definitely proto-punk.
A lot more than just Wild Thing, okay? The song Wild Thing. I've been wanting to do a...
What do you think of the original name that wanted to call it?
Troglodytes.
What do you think?
Well,
I thought that would have been fantastic.
Well, that was the name, but it was just nobody could say it.
Nobody could
nobody could read it or say it. So
what
they
the hell does that say?
Yeah, they had to do that, you know. I like this band. They're kind of like I said, they're underrated. And if you listen to them, they're very primitive. You could see like how, you know, punk bands got into them and stuff like that. Other proto-punk bands like the MC5 like them. And, you know, they were British. And it's a very interesting background. So,
to the point that even Jimi Hendrix did his own version of Wild Thing, which was, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's just such a primitive, easy. It's an easy song if you know how to play guitar. It's not hard to do, but it's great. You know, I always like that song, and they got a bunch of others that are even better, really.
So let me ask you just a few questions before we start, because I know you're going to answer these questions through the way, but these guys had commercial success pretty much off the bat.
Right off the bat. Well, their first single bombed, but the second single was
Wild
Thing.
But I mean, pretty much off the bat, they were just like...
They had a very interesting beginning. There's a Kinks connection there we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah, definitely the manager, right? The manager,
And... I mean, there's also a story here where it's a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of just mistakes.
And also
they could have been a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, but there was a lot of
infighting.
Because when you told me that pretty much
the movie,
the Spinal Tap was, I was like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, they're like motherfucking each other. Like it's like, oh my god, this is great.
Yep. Now, basically, the Troggs started with these two guys here. Reginald Maurice Ball, okay? He was born June 12, 1941 in Andover, Hampshire, England.
Yep.
Came from a blue-collar background, and actually was a bricklayer up until Wild Thing came out.
Wow.
Okay, he kept his job as a musician early on, and he just had that background.
So he kept his bricklayer job
until Wild Thing went top 10. But they were already around for like 3 years already at that point. So
because for some reason it looked like they had commercial success here and also in the U.S. pretty quick. It didn't take much.
No, it didn't take much. But the second guy that you have to mention is Ronald James Bullis.
Yeah.
He was born a year earlier, May of 1940, in the same town, Andover, Hampshire, England. Now, in 1964, they decided they would start a band, and that band would be called the Troglodytes. They had histories in other bands before that. Yeah, and like we just said, it had to be shortened to the Troggs because nobody could fucking say it. In 65, Reginald Ball would change his name to Reg Presley, and that was a name given to him by New Musical Express journalist Keith Altham. Very well-respected journalist at the time, and just said, you should change your name to Presley. I mean,
it sounded much better.
It sounded better than
Presley.
Ronald would also change his name to
Ronald Stone.
What was it? Ronald Bond.
That's
Now, Larry Page, who was the early Kinks manager, had heard of these guys because they came out with a single called "Lost Girl," and that flopped.
Yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, but he heard of the Troggs because somebody told him that they actually played "You Really Got Me" better than the Kinks.
Yeah,
and he was like, "All right, I got to check them out."
You really got me.
So he brought them into the studio and was impressed right away by them, and he signed them to his label, which was called Page One Records. It was 1965.
Yep.
The single for "Lost Girl" had bombed, and they needed something else to come out with. They were looking around, and then there was a rockabilly guy named Chip Taylor who had a lot of songs. He's actually John Voight's brother.
Yeah.
The actor John
Voight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's actually his brother. He had a song called "Wild Thing" that a band called the Wild Ones had done, and it just flopped.
Yeah.
So he said, you know what, we could do something else with this song, change it a little bit.
And they made the ultimate fucking rock and roll. I mean, the ultimate garage
rock song.
They when they compare them, and this is just out of my reading. So, you know what? The Wild Thing is ranked out of the 500 most greatest rock song of all time. Guess what number Wild Thing is ranked?
It's up there.
Nah.
Nine? Number 9?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's low?
It's 257.
Out of what?
Out of 500 of the best rock
halfway.
songs.
That's
which
where
I
it
thought,
should be.
which I thought that was a proper way.
I thought that was definitely accurate.
And they were also a big influence garage rock and punk, and they were also pop rock and proto punk also.
Well, yeah, I mean.
So you think that's a good description?
Pretty much. I mean, with these labels, it's tricky. In the late '60s, there was not much difference between top 40 and rock and roll. Rock and roll was in the top 40. Of course, you had pop stuff in the middle of that too, but there was no punk rock. It was just rock and roll. Okay, it didn't exist yet. But you could tell in the evolution of the music that definitely bands like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and probably a lot of the British bands out there were listening to the Troggs, at least in their musical upbringing as kids, okay, teenagers and stuff before in the 70s they started playing their own shit. The song Wild Thing would be propelled to stardom basically by a performance in England that they did called Thank You Lucky Stars, a show they used to be on, and it got them to number 2 with that song. But interestingly, the song would actually make it to number 1 in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, and for a British band, that just shows at the time in '66, July of '66, how much the British invasion had really taken over.
Yeah.
Okay, between when the Beatles came in '64 to that time in '66. If you had a British accent, you went to number 1 in the United States.
Yeah.
It knocked out everything before that. Okay, what you had in '63 and '62 and '61 was a lot of like vocal groups, the girl groups, the Phil Spector stuff, Shangri-La's, and we're going to be doing a show on them soon.
The Shangri-La,
all that stuff was knocked out by the British invasion. So the American public was hungry for anything from England. At this point.
Was the Shana the guys that had that show on TV also?
Oh, you're thinking of Shana now.
Shana, remember that?
Yeah, they were great. They were a retro doo-wop band. Yeah, the Shangri-La's were a girl group. They sang like Leader of the Pack. And,
that's
right.
Definitely as a restaurant.
And we're going to do a show on that next month.
I don't have any.
But the heavy riff of Wild Thing, and there was kind of like a sexual innuendo to it. Did you know the song was done in one take?
I saw that. They did it in one take.
They did it in one take. And Larry Page had some other band in the studio, and he kind of like ushered them out a little bit earlier and got these guys to come in and do one song. And it was like done in like 15 minutes.
15 minutes, that's it, rap. It's great.
Yep.
You know what's funny? So, technically, Presley and Bond, they knew each other from childhood, right?
From the same town.
From the same town?
Yeah.
Did you know, did they go to the same school or something? Is that
I
what
don't
bonded
know.
them?
I don't know. I don't think so because Presley was younger than him by a year or two. So, I mean, they might have been in the same school. Most British people in those days, if you were like working class, you went to trade school kind of stuff. That's what they would do.
Because they say they formed an R&B band in the beginning.
They did. They had some other things early on that kind of changed into the Troggs.
Yeah. Because I would like to hear some of that early stuff, like the R&B stuff.
I don't think it was ever anything recorded with that. When you say R&B in those days in England, it was the stuff the Stones were doing.
Yeah.
Like the Stones before they really took off were doing a lot of like Bo Diddley, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? That was what was popular. The one problem with Wild Thing was that in the United States it got distributed by 2 different labels. There was a fight over the Page One Records was the label, but then there was a distribution out of England into the United States, and there was an argument with that. And so basically, I would think that the profits probably got split between these 2 labels. That had to hurt them. Yeah. And also, they never made it over to the United States until '68. When I researched it, I was like, what?
Yeah, they had a problem. They had the #1 album, but they couldn't play in the U.S.
Now,
like, how the fuck does that happen?
Well, you know what? I think you know, and you're not going to prove it, but I think there might have been a concerted effort of certain people in the United States to not make them big.
The Beatles.
The Beatles. Maybe.
Just like the Kings.
Maybe.
Just like the Kings,
yeah.
the
I mean,
Beatles.
well, the Kings ended up. They came in, but they got themselves banned. The Troggs just couldn't get in, and it was really like, you know, I think there was kind of like an effort to get them to keep them down because they were worried about these lyrics. Okay, not just in Wild Thing, like some of the songs that came later, like the next single was called "With a Girl Like You."
Oh, that's
all right, and that was actually recorded at the same session as Wild Thing.
Oh yeah,
okay, they
that's
squeezed
a
that
very
in
good
too.
song.
And that song went to #1 in the UK and Europe. The first LP was released in July of '66 in the UK. It was called "From Nowhere," but in America it was called "Wild Thing."
Yeah, that was weird. They had
Yeah.
like an album from.
And there's a couple of different songs on there. I mean, that was common with British bands. I remember the Kinks had that.
Yeah.
You know, there was like different songs. You know, years later when you try to collect this stuff, it's like, oh shit, they got to get like a different version of it. You know.
Let me ask you a question. How did they get so popular in the U.S. if you could never see them perform live? Were the TV shows that they were on and Americans could see them? How would they?
I don't know. It was.
Because TV was very different. I mean, you wouldn't really get shows from England.
It wasn't like they came on and went on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So how did they get popular?
I don't know. It was word of mouth. Word of mouth, I would say. Like, check out this band, and you know, radio stations would pick up one. Wild Thing was almost like a.
You could see Wolfman Jack probably playing Wild Thing.
Absolutely, with no doubt. Okay, and you know, it was a singles kind of song.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh, you'd have the 45 of Wild Thing. All right, slap it on. You know, and they.
What was the B-side to Wild Thing?
Good question. I think it depended on which
Which
label had it.
which
You know,
label had
I'm not sure. But there was also a track called "I Want You," which was written by Larry Page. Yeah. And it was interesting because
was
the
good.
MC5 early on released it as a single and said it was their song. They stole it
You know why they could do that?
because nobody knew.
And they couldn't play here live.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, and I heard that went to court and only got settled like many years later. Okay, but they actually took a writing credit for it. It was a Troggs song. Okay, it's kind of fucked up. All right, now, but then again, it shows what the Detroit bands were listening to what was going on in England at the time. You know what I mean? Now, late in '66, they came out with what I think is probably their best song. And that's called "I Can't Control Myself."
That's a good fucking
That
song.
was released as a single, and it has like some of the best lyrics, like, you know, your slacks are low and your hips are showing. Okay.
Yeah.
Your long black hair and all that, and it was kind of like a similar to Wild Thing with a great guitar riff. The sexual innuendo of it would get it to #2 in the UK. Actually, the Ramones would cover that song in 1995 on their Acid Eaters album. They do a great version of it. And in the States, the song was deemed kind of controversial. There was a radio guy in those days. He was like almost like a censor, and his name was Bill Gavin.
Yeah.
Okay, now he was after certain rock bands. I'd like to do a little more research on this guy because his name has come up with other things. Because, like when the Byrds did 8 Miles High, you know that song?
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was the one that kind of, even though the song did well, but he was on the record saying, like, that's a song about drugs.
Yeah, because that would be a song about.
Not really. I mean, he's singing about like 8 Miles, you know, like love and stuff. I think, you know. But you can't tell, you know. But I mean, it wasn't obvious. But he thought it was a drug song. But the scream at the beginning of "I Can't Control Myself," he goes, "Oh no!" It was really loud. This guy Gavin thought that was an orgasm.
It could have been.
No, when you hear it, it's not. Yeah, I don't want to know.
Oh no, not now!
No,
Hold
not
it.
you again.
Can you hold it for 5 more minutes?
That's crazy. Could have been. You never know. the censor Bill Gavin, he was very successful with holding down that Troggs single.
Yeah, you know what?
It only got to number 41.
It's always like, you know, they always had like flirtatious kind of fucking lyrics. That,
Yeah.
hey baby, come. You know, it was like
exactly.
it was all like.
Look, I mean,
it was sexual. They had a lot of sexual innuendo, and I think that's why fucking people were like, "Oh shit, these guys are evil."
The powers that be. But the kids liked it.
The kids,
you know,
of course, the kids love it.
Now, they would come out with a second LP in '67 called Dynamite, and that album was not released in the United States until many, many years later. They would do a cover of Van Morrison and Them's song "I Can Only Give You Everything," a song called "Last Summer." They did a cover of
Last Summer.
That's a good
was
song.
great.
Yeah.
Last Summer.
I mean, they have Troggs in the jukebox here.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I hear the stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Like the grass.
Yeah, Night of the Long Grass.
Yeah.
Yep. They covered Bo Diddley's "Mona," which the Stones had.
Mona,
The Stones did a good cover of that on their first album. Then there's the song "Cousin Jane."
Yeah, Cousin
which is a
Jane.
weird kind of haunting song. Yeah.
I gotta skip over the time because I listened to
When
it
you
like
listen,
20,
when
30
you listen
times.
to the words, it's talking about how his cousin would come over and he would make out with him on the porch.
Yeah.
Or the balcony or something, whatever it's supposed
Yeah,
to be.
watch it where
Yeah.
you use porch because, you
Yeah.
know, 30-day ban in Facebook.
Yeah, jeez. Damn, I've been there, done that. 30 days in jail.
Hey,
the New
people.
Musical Express would call Cousin Jane a beautifully evil ballad. Kind of is.
It was
Kind of
it.
is. Now, in October of '67, they would come out with probably their most popular song after Wild Thing, and that's "Love Is All Around."
Yep.
Okay, that was the single that came out that month, and it's a song about just boys and girls in love, but it kind of became like a hippie anthem. Because this was the summer of love.
Yeah.
Okay. Love is all around.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know these dirty hippies were dancing around to that song.
Yeah.
But it's a good song. You know. REM would cover it.
It's funny.
A lot of years later.
What was the King song about the summer? In the summertime, was it called summer?
Oh, Sunny Afternoon.
Sunny Afternoon?
Yeah.
And these guys had like summer, which it was
Oh,
almost...
look, I mean, you want to write a song in the summer, you have the word summer in
Summer,
it. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
that was a typical thing to do in those days.
It was like
know.
all these bands followed like
Yeah.
that thing. You know, let's put this in it. Let's put that.
We need a summer song.
We need a summer song.
Yeah, it was typical. Now, people thought the song "Love Is All Around" was about drugs because there's a lyric in it that says, "I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes."
Yeah.
You know, it's about getting high.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because that song went number 5 in the UK and number 7 here in the United States
Yeah,
of America.
that was a big hit here at a time when their singles were not doing that good here. They
Yeah.
kind of bounced back a little bit with that, but unfortunately, it wouldn't last. They would kind of, plod on for a while, but not have really any more big American hits.
Yeah, they were like, after that, they were going down, and then they try to, it's a weird band. It's weird.
They had a lot of ups and downs. They didn't have a lot of lineup changes early on.
No.
That would change later, but in '67 they came out with an album called Cellophane that didn't make much of a splash. '68 they came out with an album called Mixed Bag, and in the States it was actually called Hip Hip Hooray, which was the name of one of the songs, I believe, on
Is
that.
that the one that had Hi Hazel?
No, I think that was earlier. That was an earlier one. There was a track on Mixed Bag called Maybe the Madman.
Yeah.
And then there was another song on it called Purple Shade. Maybe the Madman was written by Chris Britton, I remember, in the band. And Reg Presley wrote Purple Shade.
Yeah.
Both psychedelic songs, kind of bookends of the same idea.
You know what I was laughing that Penny Farthing Records,
Yeah.
and I worked across the street for the bar paper. I wonder if that's where they got the name for that.
Maybe. That's an old expression. It's a British
Yeah?
thing. Yeah, or an Irish thing, maybe. They would come out with a live album in '69 called Troglodyte. And what was starting to happen at that point is there were a lot of best-ofs coming out of them. And when you start seeing that happen in a band, it's kind of like, it's not doing so well anymore. You start putting out the compilations.
I think that got Plastic Penny Bassett
Yeah.
to replace Tony Murray, right?
Yes. Yes.
And actually Peter Stapler in 1969.
Yeah,
So
he would
they
leave the
lined up.
band at that point. And there was a lot of infighting starting in the band, and that's going to bring us now to the famous Troggs tapes. In the early 70s, they were recording in the studio, and the type of studio this was that it was kind of like a little bit different than regular studios. There was a recording area, and then there was like a control area that was like separate, and they didn't realize that they were being recorded. Okay, like the switch was on, and they actually had this big fight. Okay, so these British guys are like calling each other cunts and motherfuckers and everything, and it's getting recorded. Now, for a long time in the early 70s, it was a bootleg. Okay, somehow it got out to people. It came out on vinyl or cassette, and people were like listening to it. It was funny, like the Troggs all fighting with each other. But they would actually release it officially in 1972. Now, Reg Presley didn't want to do that, but you know, he was on the record later on saying, "Oh, all right, no big deal," you know. But if you listen to this, it's funny. You could probably listen to it on YouTube. It's only like maybe 20 minutes long. These guys fighting with each other about the song, and you ain't playing it right, and yelling. It sounds like Spinal Tap.
Yeah,
it sounds just like, and that was the influence supposedly to get Spinal Tap made. They would record through the 70s. Unfortunately, not much would go anywhere, but they would also do some live albums. They would do a live album from Max's Kansas City in '81, which did well. And I think what was happening is in the punk scene in England and in the punk scene here in New York, they were getting recognized as kind of like, you know, an influence to them.
Yeah.
Okay, it didn't really cross over into a lot of success for them money-wise. It was more like credit, you know. But it's cool because it's definitely true.
You want to hear something funny? They also did. I never realized they did a version of "Good Vibration."
Yes, it was supposed to be a comeback. It was supposed to be a comeback, and it failed.
And then they tried to retake Wild Thing again
with a reggae version of it.
With reggae, and it failed too.
Yeah. I mean, these guys had a lot of bad luck. I would actually see them in the late 90s at a record convention at the Metropolitan Pavilion. And Reg Presley, and I don't know what the other members were, unfortunately, if it was anybody else, but Reg Presley was in the band, and I don't think Ronnie Bond was in the band because he died in '92.
Yeah.
But when they played this record convention, it was also tied in with something here in the city called Cave Stomp. Cave Stomp used to be these like garage rock shows that were in like late 90s and early 2000s.
Yes,
where they
were.
Do you remember them?
Yeah.
They would have like, they'd be in different places, you know, a couple of months in a row. And they would have like new bands that were like great, you know, underground bands. And then they would try to have like a couple of oldies brought in. Like I saw like the Blues Magoos, right? And the Troggs, the Chesterfield Kings. God, so many people at Cave Stomp. One time, I saw Joey Ramone come in with Daniel Ray, who was one of his producers, and he played guitar. The two of them together did like an acoustic version of the Kinks. The hell was it? So Tired of Waiting. Okay, you know, and it's just him playing, and it was fantastic.
That sounds
yeah, it was very cool. Now, in '92, REM would do a cover of Love Is All Around, and I believe it was the B-side of their radio song single. It actually became like a minor hit, and they decided to work together on an album. Now,
I thought that was like me. Can I tell you, I have a hatred for REM.
REM, do you?
I think they absolutely suck.
I like the very early stuff, like the first album.
Saving My Religion can suck my fucking dick.
I'm not like that. I mean, I don't mind like South Central and
REM to me is like it's crap. It's like
they became very preachy.
I don't know. They became too preachy, too like fuck them.
But in this connection with the Troggs, it wouldn't be the whole band. Michael Stipe didn't have anything to do with it. Okay, but they would record an album called Athens Andover, and it's based on because REM's from Athens and Troggs are from Andover, England. It really didn't spark anybody's interest too much. I've listened to it. It's not a bad album. I mean, it's kind of like the Troggs playing with a backup band of REM, and it's kind of like neither one of their styles, so it's just different.
I still think the weirdest thing they teamed up with Oliver Reed.
Yes, the actor. Yeah. At one
What the
point.
hell was that
They were,
about?
I don't know. They were getting some bad advice in the late '70s, and shit, early '80s, and I think that's when they did that in the '80s with Oliver Reed.
In '92, they teamed up with actor Oliver Reed.
He was already old at that point. Yeah.
A player, snow player, Alex Higgins.
Yeah.
With another version of the following year, a wolf from the TV show The American Gladiator.
Wow.
They were teaming up with some
Bad shit. Bad shit. Now, Lester Bangs, who was a great music journalist, he called them the progenitors of punk.
Yeah.
There's a great collection of Lester Bangs writings called, what the hell was it called? Carburetor Thumb. Okay? And it's a bunch of his writings. He always brought up the Troggs.
Yeah.
He just loved these guys from like the beginning. Iggy Pop, the Buzzcocks, all influenced by them. The Ramones, like you said earlier, Jimi Hendrix was too, because he covered them during the Monterey Pop Festival.
Let me ask you, what do you think about Chris Allen singing Reginald Presley's praise?
Taking over for Reggie when he got sick. It's okay. He's a good singer.
He sounds a little bit like
him.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yeah, I mean, at that point they really weren't making. They were making records for themselves.
Yeah, they just didn't care.
Yeah. Now, some of their music would end up in the movie Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Ronnie Bond would leave the band, I believe in the 80s, and he would pass away in 1992.
Yeah.
And Reg Presley died, I believe, of lung cancer and a stroke in
February
2013. So, I think in the scheme of things, everybody should check out the Troggs. It's not just the song Wild Thing. They got a lot of great music that influenced what came in the 70s.
You would be amazed how many hits.
Yeah.
Like if you listen,
Yeah.
they got so many
You
hits.
know these songs.
Yeah, you'll
You
be
know.
like, it's the same thing. When we did Raven, I was like, I know all these fucking songs.
When we did what?
Yeah, we did Link Ray.
Oh, Link Ray,
I was
yeah.
like, wait up, I know all these fucking songs. It was shocking.
Yeah, I mean, the Troggs are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Neither is Link Ray, for that matter. He's always getting snubbed.
His name always gets
Comes
brings up, but they haven't put him in.
Yeah, they gotta put him in. So, that's all I got for you.
That's all you got?
Yep.
Any shows coming up? Anything? Song of the week?
Well, hey, song of the week with this is, you know what? I'm gonna give it. I can't control myself. I can't control myself. It's easy to say Wild Thing, but I'm gonna say I can't control myself just for that scream in the beginning.
Yeah.
And somebody thought it was an orgasm. There you go. There you go. Give it to him.
All right, people. Remember, don't get drunk, get locked up. We'll see you next week.
All right.